My name is Nico Silva. I'm 22 years old, and I am a racing driver. I've been racing since I was 5 years old, so I've been racing for 17 years. I started karting when I was 5 years old and did some national and international kart races until I was able to get sponsorship to go race in Formula cars and race cars, to go race in Brazil, Europe, United States, and wherever I was able to get my butt into and drive a race car. And so now I'm racing in LMP3 with Virage Team and doing the Aussie driver search in Australia, trying to fight for a seat to race in the Aussie V8 Super 2 Series, as well as a round in the Australian GT3 Championship, and trying to further my career to racing whatever I can get into in the 2019 season.
Let me ask you a question about Brazilian racing drivers. The Scandinavians and the Brazilians are kind of like the racing kings and queens, probably. I'm not sure about that side. On the Brazilian side, you've got names like the greatest of all time, Ayrton Senna.
I agree with you.
Yeah, Emerson Fittipaldi, and the list goes on. I think if you like Google racing drivers, Brazilian racing drivers, there's like hundreds and hundreds of hundreds. What is it about Brazil that you guys really like to go fast?
I think about the Brazilians is that as Brazilians, we are very competitive. And I say that because I'm Brazilian American, so I'm also American. So I go back and forth from nationalities, and because I identify as both. So as Brazilians are very competitive, just like how you see in soccer, how you see in mixed martial arts, and other sports that we are good at. And we have passion. Passion is one of the biggest driving forces of why we want to be the best at what we do. Those two things that I feel like makes a good athlete, and it's one of those two things that make a Brazilian a good driver, or a good athlete, or a good competitive person.
You say athlete. That is something that I was thinking about before I got on the mic with you, just kind of prepping for the show. I think every real solid racing driver starts almost like at infancy stages. It's like you're 2 years old, you could barely walk, but you've already got pedals in front of your feet, right? So explain that process. Why is it that important for you to start so young? I
started at 5 years old, so I basically drove out of the womb. There are a lot of professionals and a lot of drivers that started in their late teens, early teens. So it's more about kind of how smart you are with your career and how you make it go. Because I know a bunch of drivers that started late and still made it. And I know a bunch of drivers that started very early and have not made it.
Right.
So I think that starting early is a big help because it develops kind of like a sixth sense. When I hop into a car, when any driver, or even when they start at a later age, they start to develop a sixth sense that, driving is not something that you have to think about so much. So you got more capacity to do other things while you're driving, think about strategy, strategizing with the team, and think about setup and things like that.
Right.
So car feel and car control is kind of second nature and just subconscious.
Right. But I'm assuming that if you start really young, you probably have an advantage in it. Because if you're looking at like professional racing car drivers that have been on the pole multiple times, some of the top elite, it seems like they all started karting and they were all just like you at 5, 6, they're already racing. So do you think that gave you a competitive advantage?
I'm pretty sure it did. And the reason why is that anyone who races will tell you that one of the biggest advantages you can get is seat time.
Yeah.
And from starting at a young age, you develop that subconscious sixth sense, and you also get much more seat time because you got more years and you started much earlier to get that seat time.
Right.
And it's all repetitions, practice, just like with any kid that starts in any sport. The earlier they start, the more time and more hours, if you can call it, because my father comes from an aviation background, and the more hours you have, the more experience of a pilot you are.
Sure.
So starting at a younger age, the more hours you're able to get in compared to someone who started at a later age.
Right. Yeah. So when we go back to the old athleticism thing, it's just practice makes perfect, just like anything else.
Well, perfect practice makes perfect, but yeah.
Okay. What does that mean?
Well, if you practice bad habits, you're gonna develop bad habits.
Sure.
But if you practice in the right way, you're going to get good habits.
So what are some bad habits in racing?
One of the biggest things that I've noticed was your vision. So for example, when you're going through the corner and a lot of people, because I work as a coach as well, they look just like 10 feet ahead. Right. And it's a big part of defensive driving as well, to look as far ahead as you can. So looking through the corner or looking at the next corner once you get out of the current corner you're in to get more information. And it also helps you understand that, this corner doesn't look as scary because it's so far away. I can see more. I can see the bend. I can bring more speed. I can see what's happening in front of me. There's no accidents happening. It gives you a bit more confidence because you're able to get more information earlier. So you're able to think about it and set up more.
For me, one of the biggest challenges whenever I was on the track or whenever I was even doing autocross, there's this gap of how far you can really look, at least for me, and then the reaction, right?
Yeah.
So it's this battle of the two where you're looking super far ahead and then you also have to focus on the racing line. So how do you work those two together so that you actually follow the line and then also you're like 10 steps ahead and you don't crash into someone that spun out or you don't fly off a corner because you're carrying too much speed?
Well, I think that you have to look ahead, because when you look ahead and you look where you want to go, your hands are going to follow. That's just a thing that happens. I'm not sure if you've noticed this.
Yeah.
But also, you also got to think about what you're going to do. So you have to have a checklist in your head of like, I'm going to hit this apex, let the car apex out on this exit of the corner, start accelerating in this part of the corner and things like that, and have that checklist, but still look ahead so you can receive more information while you're going through that checklist. So There's quite a bit of multitasking.
Every good racing driver I've ever seen does a ton of conditioning, so they're all in really good shape. So talk to me about that. What's the conditioning like for the type of racing that you do?
Well, the type of racing that I've been doing currently, it's endurance racing. So we do anywhere between 4 to 24 hours of racing. So we're not as extreme where we do 24 hours racing in one driver. We have a team of usually 3 to 4 drivers. But still, it's a lot of time to be in the car. My longest stint was my most recent one, which was an hour, 40 minutes nonstop, driving in the rain with all the chaos of people spinning out and crashing and driving through traffic and things like that. And the conditioning is more about not really physical fatigue, but the fact that there's just so much stress happening that you have to condition yourself where, all the little stresses on the body don't matter. So then you have 100% mental capacity, because when you start thinking about, it's like, oh, it's kind of hot in here, or, I'm a little bit sore, or I'm getting a little bit tired. That's focus that you're taking away from being quicker and staying on track. That is going to nonsense.
Right.
So physical training is a big thing, even for sprint racing on a sprint style format of just doing a quick half an hour to an hour race. Or in any motorsport, you got to train accordingly. So I have a personal trainer that gives me a program. He's over in England. He has personal trained a bunch of people in Formula One in McLaren. So for example, Mika Hakkinen, he trains Ryan Hunter-Reay. His name is Simon Hayes. And I had a great relationship with him. He's been my personal trainer for the last 7-8 years now. And, so he sends me a workout every week, and it's mostly balance works out. So we do lots of repetition, very low weight, and it's kind of like a simulation of what we're doing. So we work out specific muscles, balance muscles that you didn't even know exist. So there's places that I get sore sometimes where it's like, how do I even get sore there? But it's all about just, building up and working on the weakest link in your body. And to stay underweight, I have actually been working on this because I've been on a hiatus from racing for a few years due to sponsorship. So I got kind of fat.
Okay.
I've been working with my nutritionist, Kevin Libby. So the last 4 months, I've dropped 30 pounds and I still have a little bit more weight to lose.
Wow.
And, weight's a big thing because especially in a competitive world like motorsports, every 10th, every 100th, every 1,000th of a second that you get from saving weight and shedding weight and making the car lighter is a gain.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that right now. So hopefully by the end of this year, for the beginning of next year, I'll be in my best shape.
Let's take a couple of steps back, actually. Let's go back to that 5-year-old Nico.
Okay.
Tell me how at age 5 it all began.
So we have to go back to the 80s first. My father, he did 3 go-kart races back then over in Interlagos in the kart track, so where some of the great Brazilians started, like Senna. Mm-hmm. And my cousin, his cousin as well, he was a big name over there. He was a karting team owner over there. And he helped the growth of people like Rubens Barrichello. Wow. And other big Brazilian drivers in karting. So he'd basically pick up the kids like when they started, mm-hmm. and right until the end of their karting career when they step out of karts to go into race cars and go to Europe, right? And so my cousin was very influential as well as my father because they both are racing fanatics. Whenever my father goes to every single race, every single car event or motorsports event that I go to other than the coaching, and like 2 or 3 races in the last 17 years.
Wow.
So he was actually a big starting thing, but it all started when I saw some kids racing motocross. I was like, I want to do that. And my dad's like, oh, hell no. No, I'm not letting you do that.
There's a fine line there.
There's a fine line there. So then I went to Brazil for a family vacation when I was 4, and they took me to the go-kart track to go look at a kart race. And seeing the speed of those go-karts and just the competition and just the battling, made me like, I like this. I want to try this. And
at 4?
At 4.
Okay.
Because I was wanting to do motocross. So, I decided, this is really cool too. I want to try this too, right? And so at 4, for Christmas, my cousin sent over from Brazil a go-kart.
Okay. Very nice of your cousin.
Yeah, right? No, and he's always been supportive. My father and him and my family have always been supportive of what I do, even at 4 years old. So,
right.
My mother, she didn't really like the idea at the beginning, but to this day, she's very supportive. And, because they know it's what I love to do. I can't see myself doing anything else.
Sure.
So now we got the go-kart. And so I go to Adam's kart track over in Riverside. If it's not the first, it is one of the first kart tracks in the history of the world to exist.
Wow.
And I did a go-kart school, and, after driving it, I just I fell in love with it. It's like, I want to do this more. So my dad started to get a little bit more serious with me, started to go to the track almost every weekend and just test. And then we roll up on the year 2003, where my dad took me to my first Formula One race. I started watching a couple of Formula One races, and my dad was surprised that as a 6-year-old, as a 5-year-old, I was watching a full F1 race without any distraction or anything, while there were adults that would just take breaks, take a beer or whatever. And I'm there just in front of the TV looking with my eyes wide open, looking at the whole thing. And so he had the idea of taking me to one of the races live. And, I started to see that not only are these drivers driving these amazing cars, they're like low-flying fighter jets with the big V10 with 21,000 RPM. I didn't know all those specs at the time, but, it just shows it was such an amazing car, and just driving breaking records, driving these, in these greats we're driving. So like Juan Pablo Montoya, Michael Schumacher, Rubens Barrichello, Kimi Räikkönen, David Coulthard, just big names. Driving in some of the fastest machinery that was ever built in the history of Formula One. And, seeing that they not only were they driving these incredible machines but also making pretty good money, I was like, I know what I want to do. And that's where the karting began going seriously, and I started racing at a competitive level, racing regionally, statewide, and nationally, and even going to Brazil and Canada and Mexico a couple of times to do some racing there as well.
How did you guys continue on? Was it self-funded, or did you guys work towards getting sponsors?
So when I started, my dad was doing pretty well with his business. He has an aircraft parts business, until the recession in 2008 happened. Mm-hmm. And, people were losing houses. We were on the verge of losing our house, and we were fighting the Wells Fargo for 4 years until we actually won because of a mistake they've made. And my dad, started to make just enough money just to pay the bills and, for us to have a little bit of fun and travel as a family and things like that. But it wasn't anything where he can continue paying for my racing. And so right around 2010, 2011, my dad's like, hey, you got to look for some sponsorship. At first, he started helping me out because, a 13, 14-year-old, the way they think about going to sponsorship is you go to the biggest money guys, like, can you give me money to go racing? So he started helping me out. And then, as, his business life started to get busier and busier, I started learning a little bit more and more. I kind of took over from that, started going by myself. So imagine like a 14, 15-year-old going to like a millionaire or a guy with a lot of money. It's like, hey, like, so you can get this much exposure, and I just need like 50 grand to go do some racing, and they're just going to look at you with like the weirdest face. Like, what do you know about business?
Right.
But it was something that I had to do in order to keep on, because my father was only able to help me out up until my end of my karting years. So in order to progress through karting, to cars, I had to find other people to help. And who helped me were the people that did business with my dad. So a couple other, I guess you can say rivals, but they were friends of his that were in the same business and the same industry. They saw that I've been doing it for a long time, and they started helping me out. And that's why I got a little bit of money to continue with my car racing career, or start and continue with my car racing career. And then my first actual sponsorship, where it was, myself as a driver pitching, numbers and showing the value of racing. And it wasn't like, I'm just wanting to help this kid out, kind of a donation style thing. My first sponsorship was through Tony Roma's. Okay. So this multinational restaurant franchise was just opening their first restaurant in Brazil. And it was funny because it was an American restaurant coming to Brazil and opening up with some Brazilian heritage. And I'm an American driver racing in Brazil, and I still also have some Brazilian heritage as well. So the match was kind of cool. They were just opening up while I was starting to race there. And, it just meshed well. We had a great 2-year relationship, and they helped me out a lot. And I did really good to help them out as much as possible as well. And we were both really happy. The only reason why I didn't continue on was because due to some things that happened in Brazil, I had to shift my focus and try to go race in Europe, because if you want to be a professional, that's where you got to go.
Yeah. Why is it that Europe is the hotspot?
You want to go to Europe because that's where the racing is most serious. And the reason why is that all the manufacturers that are big into racing, so Porsche, Ferrari, Mercedes, BMW, Lamborghini, and just to name a few,
right? They're
all from Europe.
Sure.
And all the big series, so Formula One is based out of Europe. World Endurance Championship, DTM, British Touring Car, all the big touring car, all the big GT3, GT4 prototype championships, all the race car manufacturers, or most of the race car manufacturers, they're all based in Europe. Mm-hmm. And it's home. Racing was bred and, made popular, or that style of road racing and endurance racing was been made popular in Europe.
Right.
Even though there's some series like IMSA and Pro World Challenge and IndyCar here, which are not, I'm not saying that they're not professional or they're not up to par, because they are. It's just that the racing here in the United States, it seems like it's a bit more gentleman drivers. So it's more of like a pay to play. While over there, since it's the top, and since it was kind of considered the top by most drivers and most teams and most manufacturers, people tend to migrate over there to try to make a break.
Right.
So that's where you got to go. So like there are drivers that are American, that are from other countries, but they got their drive and they're racing in IMSA, right? So there's American drivers racing in IMSA, but the way they got their IMSA drive as a factory driver for a manufacturer for a big team is that they went over first to Europe, showed that they got the skills, and then the teams brought them back.
So you go to Europe. Let's go back to you, because I want to hear the full story. I want to hear all of the details. your mishaps, your challenges, and obviously your wins. So tell me the story about Europe and how everything progressed.
I have to actually start to go back to Brazil, or actually, I maybe go back even further to when I started the car racing career. So I started car racing through the Skip Barber Racing School. So I did the 3-day racing school over there in the Formula cars, and I got my licensing, and I did couple of more schools with Skip Barber, and I qualified for the karting shootout, the Skip Barber Karts to Cars karting shootout. And I won a prize purse for the next year to race in the Skip Barber Summer Series. And so I did somewhere around 10 to 12 races. I can't remember from the top of my head.
Karting races?
No, car races.
Oh, car races.
My first season in cars, and the Skip Barber cars.
Okay.
The Skip Barber Formula cars. And my last 4 races were 2 wins and 2 second places, fighting for the championship, up until the people that were helping me out were like, I'm sorry, I can't do any more because, I've helped you as much as I could. So,
sure.
My title fighting chances, which should have gotten me to the Skip Barber shootout, where I could have fought for a full season in the USF 2000 series the following year, went into ashes. I can't get mad at them because they helped me to get there. Without them, I wouldn't even be racing. So, even then, I'm still very thankful and grateful for what they did for me. And then when that happened, I started focusing for next year. So I started chasing sponsorship for next year to race here in the States in Formula cars. And, I talked to a couple people. It just wasn't moving around. And I kind of honestly got into a depressive state because, what am I going to do? I can't find the money to go racing next year. How am I going to go racing next year? I need $250,000. Where am I going to get it? And, New Year's come by, still nothing. I'm like, I'm not racing anymore. What am I going to do? And so I fell in a depressive state, and my family saw that and was like, all right, let's send you for a little vacation to Brazil with the family. You haven't seen them in 5 years. Go hang out there. And we go out there, and, I was just like, just still depressed because, I wasn't doing what I loved. Even though I was with family and they were helping me and supporting me, I still wasn't doing what I loved. So, my father, he found a team that had a Formula Renault for me to do a little test in Interlagos, because racing in Brazil is really cheap compared to here. So we're also paying on the real instead of the dollar. So the currency exchange, makes it for much cheaper as well. So I go ahead and we find this team that had a Formula Renault to do a test in Interlagos, which is one of my favorite circuits. And it was kind of like a bucket list circuit as well. Mm-hmm. And, I talked to the team, and the team was like, we got this Formula 3 car that we're trying to race. And we got all the sponsorship. But the only problem was that the driver who we got the sponsorship for decided last minute that he didn't want to race anymore. And I'm like, who doesn't want to race anymore? That's like, I'm here fighting to try to keep my dream alive. And then this other driver doesn't want to race anymore. Like, what the hell? It's like,
right.
So I won't go ahead and it's like, can I race for you guys? It's like, let's go do a test and we'll talk about it. So we go ahead and do the test, and they liked me. So then I'm like, all right, let's do this first race. We got the sponsor for this first race. Let's do it. So I go ahead and do it. It was my first race ever in a Formula 3 car. And we're going from a Skip Barber Formula car to a Formula 3 car. So it's like doing a jump from a Mazda Miata to like a Porsche GT3, or even maybe like a Cayman GT4 or something. Mm-hmm. So it's a big jump.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shoot, am I able to put my money where my mouth is? Like, do you think I'm able to do it? And we got good results. We got 2 top 5 finishes, and, I was really happy with that. And then, we started working on the sponsorship. We got a couple of sponsors, but then they dropped out. It's like, we're not sponsoring the team. We're not sponsoring this kid. We're sponsoring the other kid. Why we want to sponsor this other kid? We don't even know him. So all the sponsors that we originally had fall through. And so now I have to look for sponsorships again. Story of my life, right?
Yeah.
And so I go ahead, we found some sponsors, and, and then we did the next race in Interlagos because it was a home race for a shoestring budget. To do a race, there's a full budget, right? I think we did our race that weekend for about 10% of the budget that would actually have been needed to do a full race. So we did the whole weekend on used tires. We never had a fresh set of tires. And a fresh set of tires to a new set of tires, like 2 to 3 second difference. We basically did it for 10% of the budget, and I was able to snag my first podium position in a Formula 3 car in my fourth race ever.
That's impressive. 2 to 3 seconds at a racetrack is like a lifetime.
I know, right? And we were able to get some good results. So I was really surprised. Like when I first came in, I was like, I sucked. Like, what it ends. Like, no, you got to rush to the podium. You're in third place. I was like, what do you mean I'm in third place? Like, yeah, all the, there are a couple of cars in front of you, like blew their engines. So now you're in third. I was like, what? So it was kind of an interesting race, right? And then no more racing then. And we started working for next year. And I made this contact with Tony Romas because a little birdie told me that there's this American restaurant chain coming to Brazil. I'm like, that might be an interesting opportunity to follow through. And so we did. And by the end of that year, which was 2013, we finally got a sponsorship with Tony Romas, and then we're going racing for a full season next year. The way it worked actually was, I have to go back a little bit just to explain this. They had the sponsorship to run the race, but we had to buy the car because the car was owned by the previous driver. So in order to do that, my father and my mother, we didn't have money, but my grandmother passed away recently. So we had to chip into the inheritance that my grandmother gave me to buy the car. And then what ended up happening was that we did all that racing, and the whole sponsorship thing for racing with Tony Romas didn't happen quickly enough for the first 2 races with that team. So what the team decided to do is like, hey, since you're not able to go to the first 2 races, or since you broke our contract, which was, already broken because, we covered our end of the deal by saying, we're buying the car, and then we got the car. Now you got to hold up your end of the deal with the sponsorship and stuff like that. So technically they broke their contract. Since you did that, we're keeping the car.
Huh.
And, it's kind of Brazil. In Brazil, the one thing is that the justice system or the legal system really is very inefficient. So they were able to do that. And to this day, that car is not in my hands, and it's actually been sold off to someone else. I missed the first 2 races, and then I made my inaugural race with the second team that I raced with in Interlagos again in the rain. And I was racing against some big names that are now racing in GP2 or the new Formula 2 and GP3. And, I was, racing up against them. I haven't done any testing. They're testing, almost every weekend. In order to race in Formula 3, you have to be racing in the car all the time. So there's kids spending almost $1 million just to stay up to speed, because that's how competitive racing is. And I don't even have a tenth of that. So what I had to do is that my whole life I always had to hop into a car and get up to speed as quickly as possible. So that's what I had to do that race. But luckily there was some rain, so I was able to help even out, and I was able to be within the top 3 in my position. So always, in the practices and qualifying, getting 3rd, 2nd, 1st places in the practices and qualifyings. And then we go ahead and do the race. And then the team was like, you haven't done any testing this year? It's like, no, not at all. And so they're kind of surprised, and they're happy with the results. And we go out there, and I was fighting for 2nd place, and the gearbox breaks on the first race, because all these Formula 3 races were double race weekends. So you had 2 races and 2 points races each round, right? So then in the second race, I had to start from last, and I'm working my way up to 4th or 3rd from last of.
And how many cars are in the series?
Like 20 cars, 18 cars.
Wow. You're hustling.
Yeah. And then again, the engine blows up, and there's big tennis ball sized hole in the block. Like, and I've been thinking like, oh shoot, how am I gonna pay for this? Because I don't have the money to pay for the engine build and stuff like that.
Right.
Thankfully, the way it works in racing was that if and because this is the first time I drove a car that I didn't own other than Skip Barber cars, the way it works in racing is that you only pay for mechanical failure if it's induced by you. So if you do a misshift, or if you, don't blip enough, or you abuse the car, then you'll pay for the damage. But if you don't, if it's something that's caused by lack of maintenance from the team, then the team will have to pay for it because it's not your fault.
Oh, okay.
So
all right.
The good thing is that it wasn't my fault. So I'm like, okay, cool. And we go on to the next race. And, same thing, we're going out there and we're doing well, always within the top 3 with the standings. But then again, in qualifying, the exhaust pipe comes loose, and I wasn't able to qualify. Race 1, gearbox failure, and then again, engine failure.
Yeah, that's
so
tough.
4 for 4, not a finish, right? And I'm showing strong results. Next race, go ahead, top 2 in practice again, and then we go into qualifying. Now the battery cable comes loose, and then the car dies. Race 1, I have half power, and the engine blows up, and then race 2, half power again. The engine blows up, and then my car catches on fire.
Oh my God.
So now 6 for 6. And then I think we do another race. But then again, the whole season I'm racing with this team and not a single finish. And this team started to blame it on me. But I'm like, and I've been telling them, hey, the valve train, I hear some pinging. Let's take a look. It's like, nah, it's okay. We're okay. And I'm telling them, it's like, hey, something doesn't sound right. Let's take a look at the gearbox. The gearbox is grinding. It feels kind of rough. Let's open it up. And then they're like, no, they're dismissing me. Like, no, like I don't know anything. It's, no, it's all right. You're just feeling things. It'll be all right for the race.
Right.
So, and then, it always happens. And then they're trying to say it's my fault, but then I'm always able to prove myself that, hey, it's not my fault. And the biggest thing that I've noticed, and one thing that I kind of tell people and myself, is that one of the big mistakes that I've done is that my teammate was the son of the team owner.
Okay.
And for the most part, I was placing better than my teammates. Ever since then, I was like, maybe it's not a good idea to be racing against the son of your team owner.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Unless you're racing with him in an endurance style format. And then my father and I, we go back to Tony Romo's. They want to do another year.
Okay.
And then we go, all right, hey, so next year, is your son racing with you? It's like, no, my son's not racing with me next year. So that means I've been showing the results. It's like, yeah, you've been driving great. It's like, next year, it's going to mean that I'm going to be the number 1 driver, right? It's like, yeah, totally. We show up for the first race in 2015, and turns out it wasn't that son that raced, but the other son was racing with me. It's like, wait, what? Surprise, right?
Yeah.
And so finally, we actually had a car that was working and in failure or anything, other than the fact that the ECU, every time it would get close to red line, it would go into a limp mode. When we were in the paddock, I brought a friend over with me, and he was hearing a conversation. Like, are you going to put that ECU on the car? He's like, yeah, this ECU. It was like, it wasn't like, oh, that ECU. It was like, oh, that ECU.
Right.
And so and then that just kind of fishy, and he put that on my car. I was able to do okay. The other drivers did this was in February, and from season end until then, they had 10, 20 test days, and my first time hopping into this new car, right? Because now we're racing in the newer generation car. And I go out there, we're doing top 5 again. And, I'm getting up to speed. Each lap I go out there, I'm getting quicker and quicker and quicker until we get to the qualifying the race, and I'm fighting for top 5 again. And then there's a caution, right? So under the caution, I'm driving around and everything, and I just feel this very large thump, just really large crash behind me. Lifts up the car 2 to 3 feet in the rear end, 2 to 3 feet in the air, and just flops back down. I'm like, what the hell? Were you? Why did you crashed into me on the yellow, full course yellow?
Right. Yeah.
And I'm looking around. I couldn't see who it was. I saw a little nose, and the nose was broken, and I see him dive in, and the radio communications weren't working. So I was like, hey, can you hear me? Is there damage on the car? Nothing. Can you hear me? There's damage on the car. Nothing. So then every time I pass on the front straightaway and the yellow flag, I would point back. I'm not sure if they understood me or not, but there wasn't anything. It was oh, come to the pits. There was no communication telling me that there was anything drastic. So I was like, maybe there isn't that much damage, so I'll continue on. And so I do the first restart lap, and then the next lap, I'm coming into this corner, which is a high speed S. You do it around 120 miles an hour, especially with the high downforce car that is a Formula 3 car. And it's easy full throttle. You do it left and then you do it right, just full throttle, right? And then out of nowhere, I'm doing the corner, and out of nowhere, just snap oversteer. I do a 180, able to catch it, but then I go onto the grass, and the grass only has like 2 to 3 car widths and then a guardrail, and I end up crashing. And I'm just weird because there's a snap oversteer. It's like, that doesn't happen there, right? And I look over, I get out of the car, another full course yellow because I crashed. Look over, there's that front damage from the impact with the guardrail, and then the floor of the car is squatting down on the car. I was like, I didn't even crash the rear end. What the hell happened there? So then I go back to the pits and I take a look at the video because I put my own video cameras on there, because I was doing some marketing, so I was going to put it on YouTube and Instagram and stuff like that. And I looked the rear facing camera, and I go back. Fortunately, the camera didn't die at the moment of that accident, and I saw it was my teammate. He just came in and just smashed into behind me. He's like, what? And then so it all kind of made sense. I started thinking about it, and I started made sense. So what I figured that happened, because when the car came back on the flatbed, the floor of the car was on the floor, right? So what I think happened was, from that large impact from behind, actually I was able to see that the engine and the gearbox of the car is a stressed member of the car. There's no braces or frames or anything. It's a stressed member of the car, so it's part of the chassis. So on the bell housing that goes to the engine, the holes for it were fractured, so it wasn't holding tight anymore. So what I figured happened was that it got fractured from that accident. I was driving slow, there wasn't enough pressure, so I was okay. But then when I go into this high-speed corner where there's a little bit of bumps,
right,
easy flat out, but a lot of pressure on the car, so a lot of downforce pushing the car down, it just fatigued and failed, and the floor of the car, the carbon fiber just hits the asphalt, takes away the rear grip of the car because there's no weight on the tires, and snaps the ring around. Right. So then that explains what happened there. And then I go back and, I didn't say it's like, oh, this is what happened to me. And I showed the video to the team owner. He got really pissed off. And he's, oh, you're saying that it was my son's fault? It's like, no, the car crashed and I wasn't driving. He wasn't around. But this is the reason why it's crashed, because he's starting to say, just stop making excuses. Like, all the other crashes, all the other failures were your fault, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, this is the reason why I crashed. And then he got pissed off because he think I was accusing the reason why I spun out and crashed was because of the kid. Then we got into a fight, and then everyone cooled down, and we had a meeting, right? And then we go for this meeting, and my sponsor was there. He went over there. He just got there for the race, and then this all happened. And we go to the meeting. It's like, I don't think we can work together anymore because I haven't finished a single race. And it's like, oh, this is not your fault. This is not a worry. Blah blah blah. We can fix this, whatever. And then he goes to my sponsor in front of my father and I. He's like, we don't need Nicholas anymore. We don't need Nico anymore. But if you want to sponsor the team, you can go ahead and do that. Right in front of our faces. And I'm like, no. And then the sponsor goes like, I don't like motorsports. I don't like racing. The only reason why I'm sponsoring is because I'm sponsoring Nico. Wow, okay. Nico's been great for us and everything. And I like him. So I'm not sponsoring the team. I'm sponsoring Nico. So if Nico's not racing with you guys, I'm not racing with you guys. And that was the end of my racing in Brazil. Wow. And ever since then, I was like, I really don't want to go back to Brazil, because all of this that happened. The next step forward is Europe. You got to go to Europe. And so I had a hiatus of the rest of the year. So, I had this Tony Romo sponsorship to race the full season, but all the good teams that were around there weren't around anymore, or like were already filled up, as you would think. And so I didn't race for the rest of the 2015 season, and I started working for 2016. And out of nowhere, a Formula 3 team from Europe, from Spain actually, their name is DriveX. They sent me a message on Facebook, like, hey, there's an F3 team in Brazil that contacted us and, told us that you're a good driver and that you were open and we wanted to test you. Cool. Right? And the funny thing is that the team that gave me my recommendation was a rival team. So we started talking more and we decided to do a 2-day test in Catalonia. My first time racing in Europe, first time racing Catalonia with the team in that F3 car, because now it's the brand new generation F3 car, right? And I go out there, do a 2-day test, and the morning of the second day, I'm already doing qualifying lap times in foggy conditions on a cold track. Kind of sore because I wasn't doing much for the rest of the year, so I was a little bit out of shape as well. And Catalonia is all a mid to high speed cornering track. So there's a lot of fatigue in the neck and the forearms and just the upper body.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to do, top 5 qualifying times. And then teams like, wow, okay. So now they want me to race with them next year. But then that goes again to the whole thing of getting sponsorship to race next year.
Okay.
Now I don't have the help of Tony Roma's because they were only interested in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to start from scratch now. I have to make brand new contacts because I'm racing in Europe. I don't know any company or anyone who's interested in doing stuff in Europe. So I had to go talk to new people and basically start from scratch again.
Yeah.
And so I had a little bit of money left over to do that test, and then did following another test with that team the next year. So in 2016, in the beginning of the year. And we weren't able to come up with the money because the way it works in motorsports for the most part is either you get a money for the race, but for the most part, you get the money for the full season and they want it up front, or they want 2 or 3 payments, so the driver has to go chase for the sponsors. And unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. And, that kind of died out. I still talk to team owner to this day. We try to get things done and race together again because they're very professional and, great team. Miguel Angel, the owner of DriveX, great person. We talk to this day, and, I'd be very lucky and happy to work with them again. Cause it was just a great experience. It felt like home, and unfortunately wasn't able to work out. So then that was the last time I drove a race car. From 2016. I have a 3-year hiatus. So no racing in 2017 and nothing for the beginning of 2018. So I start talking to the people that I made contact over with the years. So people who are wealthier and also people that, that like racing and have the capability to sponsor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I start talking to a couple of teams in Europe in LMP3 and GT3. And then, I had opportunity to do a couple of test days. And so I go ahead and I start talking to these people. It's like, hey, this is kind of like my last year. I need to do something this year. If nothing happens, I'm not going to be able to do anything. I'm not asking you for a handout or anything. What can I do to deserve a financial backing from you guys?
Mm-hmm.
And these are people that followed me for the last 7 years, for the last 10 years, for the last 17 years, seeing me how I've progressed through my racing and just keep at it and just, fighting to make a break. Most of them were like, you know what? I know how hard you've been fighting for this. Don't even worry about it. Just here's a check, right? So I was able to get 10 people together to help me out to do a test day. But the test day kind of flailed out. It didn't work. It didn't happen. So now I got this cash in my bank account that I can't use for anything else but for the racing, and nothing to use it on. So I'm like, now I'm gonna find something to use it on that won't be a waste of money, because this is kind of like a make it or break it thing. So I have to use it on something wisely. The first thing I find is the Aussie driver search, and what it is, it's a very interesting situation where a couple of guys in Australia, they made this competition where they have rankings. So they have an amateur, a semi-pro, and a pro competition, and a GT competition. So you pay like 2,000 Australian dollars or 4,000 Australian dollars, and then you can also make it in payments to go, and you do like half an hour to 50 minutes depending on the competition you do in some of these race cars. So like a Toyota GT86, Australian V8 Ute race car, or a BMW 1 Series race car, and then also like a Audi R8 GT3 and a V8 supercar race car, right? And you do 10 minutes in each of them. There's a coach in the passenger seat of yours, and he's judging you. So for example, he'd be judging you and saying, how easy is he on the machinery? How good is his technique? Does he have good car control? Is he, eating up the brakes, and is he eating up like the tires and things like that? And he would judge you for this qualifying round. The top 10 scoring people go ahead and go to the finals, and they would compete for what I'm doing is a pro, which I did qualify for back in the beginning of November. I got to go back for December 12th for the finals. I'm competing for a full season in Australian Super 2 Series, which is basically a V8 supercar, but just a category below with older machinery. And then for a round in the Australian GT Championship racing in a GT3 car in Australia.
Awesome.
So that was one of the first opportunities that I was able to find to continue my racing for next year. And the other opportunity was I've been talking to one team for 6 months. So since the beginning of this year, since the beginning of 2018. And then, out of nowhere, they call me up. It's like, hey, do you want to race Le Mans? This is back in September. Yeah, back in September. And I was like, oh, it's June. I can totally come up with funding in 6 months to race Le Mans. It's like, yeah, let's do it. When do you need money by? It's like, oh, by the end of this week. It's like, what do you mean by the end of this week? It's in June. It's like, no. There's a race in Le Mans and LMP3 at the beginning of October. Would you be interested? And like the price was right. Like the price was about a third to a quarter of the original pricing that you would need to do like an actual race in LMP3 if you were to pay at full cost. And I'm like, let's do it. I got to get myself out there. I got to, show that I'm being active and I'm current and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and do it. This call happened on Wednesday. I confirmed and sent over the sponsorship on Friday. And I flew out Sunday morning to Europe to get there Tuesday and to get my seat fitted, and I raced that weekend. That went really well, and the team is a great team. The team Virage, Julian and Philippe, the top guys there, and all the crew and my teammates there that I raced with, and they were in the sister car. All really great people, very professional. It was another time where I felt like I was back in like a family style background that I felt at home. The weekend was great. I went over to their facilities in Valencia, did some sim testing to learn the car, learn the track, because I've never been to Le Mans. I've never driven an LMP3 before then, and I've never raced with them. So, again, steep learning curve, I got to get up to speed, right? So I go over there, hang out with them for the beginning of the week, and then we fly out to Le Mans, and we get there Thursday morning. And then Friday morning, it was my first practice session. I was, I think, 4 to 5 seconds off pace. And then I do the second practice session. I dropped that down to 3. And then in the third practice session, I was, up to speed with my teammates and, with the front running guys. And so my teammate qualifies for me, and we qualify 10th, and we're starting 10th for the Sunday 4-hour race. Okay. And so we're doing strategy in the briefing room in the trailer, and it's like, Nico, would you like to start the race? It's like, sure. I've done a lot of rolling starts in the United States. Like, it's kind of like a specialty of mine because that's all we do in the States. All right. It's like, all right, okay, but who here in the team? Who here has done some rain racing? It's like, and my teammates, one's 17 years old, first year in LMP3. The other one is 21 years old, first year in LMP3 as well. Both great drivers, but don't have any rain experience in the car. And I'm like, it's like, I'll volunteer. I'll do it. And so I'm like, what'd you put yourself into? Now, not only are you starting the race, but you're starting in the rain, which is, the worst chaos you can get, because all the crashes happen in that first corner, right? And it's raining. So like, what are you doing to yourself? You want these people to like you. You don't want to.
Yeah. To do you don't want to set yourself up for failure because it's an LMP3 that you've never raced before, and I get you.
And I'm like, what did I put myself into? But I can't back down now, right? So I go over and I'm like just stressing out. It's like, I have to bring this car home in one piece. I cannot do anything to this. I cannot have my teammates hate me for crashing out and stuff like that. I can't do that. So then race day comes, and I'm in the car, and I was so nervous. I mean, I've never been this nervous in any event ever. And I was so nervous that when the camera guy for the team live streaming or live event broadcasting comes up to the car to me. Everyone's like, doing like a thumbs up and looking at it, like smiling. Yeah. I just look at the guy and like look straight back. I was so nervous. It's like, it looks so rude.
Yeah.
And so, I was trying to calm myself down. I'm calming myself down, and then turn off the car, and quite a bit of it goes away. It's funny how just turning on that car, all that butterflies in your stomach, all that nervous and anxiety just goes away. I turn on the car, we do the parade laps, get the cars up to speed, and when we do the start, and I'm like, everyone's gonna go crazy and try to like gain positions. I'm just gonna stay in my position. I'm not gonna lose any positions, but I'm not gonna try to like force anything and make any positions, and I'm just gonna stay out of trouble. My goal is that I'm not gonna try to push for the fastest lap time or anything. I'm just gonna keep myself out of trouble, bring the car in one piece, and have my team not hate me.
Yeah.
That's my goal for this race, right?
Right.
So I go ahead and the first corner to spin out, and then a couple people go off track, and I make 5 positions in the first corner. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty quick jump.
All right, okay. So now I went from 10th to 5th.
Mm-hmm.
And in the other lap, and I kind of like got into a zone, like, okay, all right, let's make more positions now. Okay, like I'm getting into it. And then I make another position or 2 in the up, and I'm up into 3rd now. And then, I'm getting into rhythm and just driving and not doing anything dicey or anything that will put me into a bad spot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just doing my best to stay out of trouble. And I'm going and going and going. And I'm in like 2nd or 3rd position, staying out of trouble and, trying not to have anyone crash into me, right? Because it's raining, it's pouring, and, slippery conditions. And I'm just there, and then we go, and it's an hour goes by. I don't even know, honestly, how much time went by, because I'm just focused on just keeping the car on track. I just want to keep the car on track, bring it home. My team starts telling me, it's like, hey, you're in 1st. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean? It's like, no, yeah, you're 1st. Like, just keep the speed. You have really great pace. Just keep that pace, and just keep on driving. No, I thought I'm just driving conservatively. I'm just not pushing anything, right?
Right.
So I keep on going. And, and I'm doing a full tank of gas and full stint on the tires. The team starts telling me on the radio, how is the tank? It's like, no fuel alarm yet. 5 laps later. You got a fuel alarm? No, not at all. 5 laps later. Fuel alarm? No, not at all. They asked me like 5 times until they told me, it's like, just come in. It's like, something's wrong with that. Just come in.
Right.
And so I did an hour 40 stint in the rain, and I was just thinking to myself, like, just call me in already. Like, I don't want this pressure anymore. Yeah. I'm just trying to bring it home. This is raining. Let's just call me in already. I didn't say that to them, but I was just thinking to myself, I don't want anything to happen to me. So they finally called me in. We did the driver switch, and I delivered the car at 1st overall.
Wow.
And I didn't even know that I walk out of the car, the whole paddock is just like clapping and cheering me on. I was like, what did I do? I didn't do anything. It's like,
yeah.
No, you did a great job. Like you're on pace and everything. It's like, I just kept the car on track and out of trouble. Like, right. What more do you want me to do? We're continuing to battling for a podium position. 10 minutes ago, my teammate is fighting for 3rd place, and we're doing really well. We're, my teammates, Jackson Coetz and Felipe Valenza, they were doing a great job to keep the car up front and, keep it up to speed and keep it in contention for a podium. And it was my first race ever, so I was really excited. And then 10 minutes remaining, the fuel strategy didn't work out, and they had to come in and do a splash and go. So we dropped from fighting for 3rd to 6th overall. Mm-hmm. We got the Prestige Championship. We got the Prestige win, the Prestige category win. But I was kind of more wanting to get the overall win. But,
right.
It was still a great learning experience, and I had a great time with everyone there. And, I'm excited to see if I can race with them in the very near future. So let's see.
Nico, it was a blast, an absolute pleasure to sit down with you. You're so young. You have such an amazing future ahead of you. You're so talented, too, to hear everything that you've done. And it's a long period of time, but still, you're such a young, I would say kid almost. So please take the opportunity to let people know where they can find you, especially if you're a sponsor that's listening. Make sure to pay close attention to this guy. So take this opportunity, shoot.
Well, the first thing I want to say is, without the people that helped me throughout all these years, I wouldn't be able to be where I'm at today.
Yeah.
So first of all, I want to thank all of them. And how they say the more mentions you get, the more value you bring to them.
Sure.
So I want to do some mentions, especially with Road Stories being so big. I'm going to have to take this time here and mention and thank ITS Zero, Mark Martin and Company, New Gen Aerospace, CSDS Aircraft, Damex, Husky Motorsports Technology, Tony Romas and Replay XD, who helped me out in the past. My family, my father, my mother, my sister, my aunts and uncles, my cousins, my friends, and just everyone around me. Simon Hayes from Performance Physics, my personal trainer. Kevin Lidme, my nutritionist at PH2 Nutrition, who both helped me to help me get to the best shape that I will be pretty soon and that I am at right now. And just everyone who helped me out through this whole course of getting to where I'm at today and helping me to get further on in my future. And, without any of you guys, even if I haven't mentioned you, you guys know who you are, my close and great friends. Even though I didn't mention you guys, you guys have all been a big part of this path and this journey to get me to where I'm at today and to help me go further in the future as well. So I have to first say that. And going back to what was it that you were asking me to say again?
I want to make sure that people can find you, especially, like I said, the sponsors. Not to say that anybody else is less important, but yeah, tell people where they can find your racing, where they can find your resume, and how they can get in touch with you if that's what you want.
Oh, for sure. No, if you want to sponsor me, if you want to help me, feel free to get in contact with me. I can use all the help that I can get. But you can find me on Instagram at the Nico Silva. And you can find me under that on Facebook as well. And you can find my contact information at nicholasilva.com, or drop me an email at Nicholas NICHOLAS.Silva SILVA at nicholasilva.com.
The Road Stories podcast is recorded, edited, and produced by me, Michael Senderovich. If you like the show, please leave a review wherever you listen. And lastly, follow me on Instagram at Road Stories Mike. Thanks so much for listening.